Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of How Outsourcing and AI Works for Small to Medium Business. And excited to have a fantastic guest on here, classic entrepreneur that you can relate to. Rhonda, you got two businesses, and she has an amazing journey she's had going on for 3+ years and using offshore virtual assistants in the education learning center space and the substitute teacher space, right? So if you ever thought outsourcing could apply to any industry, it truly can. But thanks for joining me, Rhonda. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And she's from my wife's home state of Michigan. So we talked about the cool summers there as we both kind of enjoy and as we sweat it out here in Atlanta. But as always, we'd like to kick off the episode, and we'll get into a full introduction with Rhonda and let her share kind of her background and journey. She's a fellow EO member, Entrepreneurs Organization member as well. So we've got that intersection. But as always, like to promise you right up front, like to have my guest and myself share a tool, a podcast, a book, an app, any latest kind of like productivity hack that they've experienced lately as we're all trying to find new ways to kind of get an edge. So Rhonda, I'll let you kick off real quick. Any kind of latest ones you've been engaging?
So my son, which we can't tell him that I took a recommendation from him and listened because I'll never hear the end of it. He's a middle child. So, but he was listening to this podcast called Manager Tools. And it's really interesting because it's very focused, right? So, content wise, what I like is I can search through and like if something I'm struggling with, I can pick a specific podcast and it's very practical. So not a lot of fluff. And I've really liked that. My book is a favorite that I'm going back to that I actually read. Someone shared with me shortly after my mom passed away, which was 15 years ago. And I grabbed it because I'm visual. So I was like, you know what, I'll share. But it's Option B, and it's written by Adam Grant and Sheryl Sandberg. And it really is, the book is great because it's called Facing Adversity, Building Resilience and Finding Joy. But she talks about the unexpected loss of her husband and how we process grief. And sometimes people, I think, have this misnomer that grief only shows up when you lose a human being, except it's not true. And if I've learned anything, particularly navigating, and I consider myself a survivor of the COVID era as an entrepreneur. And I think there was a lot of grief and loss. And so I went back to revisit some things, and it just talks not only about the uniqueness of grief in every individual person and how it can show up, but how to appropriately respond. And one thing that always sticks out is pervasive. There are 3 Ps, but the pervasive is when you're in the thick of it. And I did, and probably revisiting because I lost my dad in November too. And so I think, you kind of revisit what that grief felt like the first time of a big like anchor of person lost. But pervasive is it feels like it's in everything and it's never going away. And I think one of the gifts that she gives is how to appropriately respond when someone's in a form of grief. And so it's just a book I'd highly recommend. So it doesn't not maybe even because you're in the thick of a big grief. But we all, I was an empty nester. The youngest just moved back in, so I'm not anymore. But there's grief there too. So and tech tool, I'm gonna be honest, shiny things are cool for a minute, but I just keep going back to Microsoft Office. We use 365. And if I can figure out how something new is doing something, I'm like, can Microsoft Office do this? Because then I don't need another tool, right? I can just, so Teams can do that. Or, is that a feature we could use Microsoft Forms? And so then I need one login, everything's in one place, and can they talk to each other? So I've started to try to push to using Copilot more because it can analyze and search other things in my organization. I'm still not very proficient, but I am persistent. So those are mine.
Perfect. No, those are great immediate shares, and I really appreciate it. And then I'm certainly on the having a friend that just recently lost his father, and we're kind of in the middle of navigating that. Yeah. I think to your point, even if you're not going through it yourself, being able to, like you said, knowing how to respond. And a lot of times and I'm not sure what the book shares, but I know I was told a while back ago that when you put that additional burden on someone that's going through grief or loss of like, just ask for what you need, right? And putting the burden, just go do it, right? Just go do the thing, right? Whatever it may be, whether
it's exactly what she says.
So she may be, it was an EO or a long time ago, somebody that shared that. And so I always think like, I just never ask, tell me what I can do. It's like always just, whether it's get that meal delivered, whether it's getting the house clean for them, whether it's just, showing up in some capacity. So thanks for sharing that. That's fantastic. And and sorry for the losses there. I know that's a lot, especially
thanks.
Back to
I appreciate that. So but I would say, loss is a part of life. And so the more we can build the resilience and the coping skills to support others and to support ourselves, like that really, when you think about being an entrepreneur and you think about even the bravery to say, I need an assistant. When you're growing your business at the beginning, you're like, I can do it all because you're motivated by passion and like, I'm going to prove that I can do this. Yeah. But that's only sustainable for so long. And you hit those tipping points. And so sometimes grief is letting go of the company that used to be, even though you want to scale. It's like, I missed that moment where I knew every single child in my program. If I saw them in the grocery store, I knew their parents, I knew their names, I knew their dog's name. And now I could go to a restaurant and I meet somebody I don't know them because I have 3 programs across 3 different towns with 700 children. It's not possible, but you grieve the loss of the beauty in that, Yeah.
No, it's people don't realize, they don't know that really it is grief that you're navigating in different aspects of life that aren't as the obvious, typical ones that you consider. So thanks. Those are wonderful shares that we'll make sure to put in the show notes. And when it comes to the, whatever everyone's daily operating systems are, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's, we're a Google enterprise shop in our place, is, we're all navigating how to integrate all this AI madness into our lives. And so, it's kind of why the title of the podcast is that, outsourcing and AI. And sometimes we touch on one or the other or both. And at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out how do you kind of integrate this into your world. It's a bit overwhelming and unclear. And a lot of the ways how the virtual assistant outsourcing world, has been and still is to a certain extent. People are aware of it, but it's like, how does this actually work? Right. And that's why we created the theme of this episode. And, whether people work with us or, any other company, it's just encouraging folks to go down this path that, we're beyond the top of funnel awareness, that people know that offshoring and virtual assistants and outsourcing, all that works, but people just want to know, how does this actually work in my business? And, even though our guests may be in a different industry, they can at least maybe relate, to some of it. Yeah. And then the AI piece is part of the equation. And I know we've been focused heavily on trying to train all of our staff and the different tools. And then how do you integrate? And to your point, like Copilot, right? It's like, how do you use Copilot? Because, ChatGPT is great, but it's external. Why not try to leverage the one that's built into my current ecosystem? Yeah. Which is the same thing we're doing with Gemini, right? I mean, I started on ChatGPT, but now, and I've been super impressed. I mean, Gemini has been phenomenal in terms of how we use it and analyze it and our business. And even with our clients like yourself, like with the playbooks that we have, we've created custom prompts now to analyze all the work we've done for clients and identify where are gaps, where we may not, best utilizing. So it's still a work in progress, but we're all kind of coming to terms with it. So we started sharing a little bit of kind of your background, Rhonda, and if you don't mind kind of sharing kind of your journey, what led to kind of where you are, and we'll kind of do a quick snapshot of that, and then we'll kind of jump into your journey and using Ruth and kind of in your business and what your concerns were, and then some specific examples of how it's been helpful for you. But tell us a little bit of your background heading to it.
I've been in early education literally since I graduated from college. And I didn't know it, but I became a mom right out of college. And it was a great synergy. I could be with my son and do something I loved, which was, 85% of a child's brain develops by age 3. So although we don't see in the United States what I would feel to be an appropriate stature of an early education teacher in the stature of career choices, it is immensely important, but also requires an unbelievable amount of trust. You have kids, anybody you leave your kids with. It's not like, I have this beautiful car, take care of it, it's insured. It's not like that, right? Every interaction we have with children leaves lasting neural pathways, whether they're good or bad. And so it's a tremendous amount of pressure, but I fell in love with it very early on and did the corporate, worked in the nonprofit sector, built a business for some entrepreneurs. They were
Rhonda, by the way, is
two
up in
CEOs.
Michigan. So everybody knows
Yeah,
context.
up in Michigan.
Yep.
There were two CEOs and a dentist who wanted to open an early childhood program, but knew nothing. And so they hired me, and I wrote every policy, procedure, built the company, carried the blueprints around with me for a year while we broke ground, went to the library to give tours of my blueprints. I was in love. And I made them a lot of money. And it was very successful. And then 09, 08, 09 started happening, and they started pushing me to do things that would make them more money, but were on the border of being ethical. And in that time frame, my 18-year marriage to my college sweetheart ended. My mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. My dad was diagnosed with liver failure. My oldest son went off to college. My marriage ended. My dad got a liver transplant. My mom was managed 1 year and 3 days. It was the best, worst year of my life. My sister lived with me. We raised, because she lived in Connecticut. And what do you do in your family, right? You follow the core values that you have in your business, in your personal life. And we did the most insane Brady Bunch of 6 kids between 1 and 18 of a year of crazy love and chaos. And that's why I say it's the best, worst year, because it was my last year with my mom. A month after 3 days after my mom's funeral, they told me to get my shit together. I had 2 weeks to grieve, get over it, and get back there and make them some money.
Wow.
And because they were absentee owners, like they weren't on site, that was a tipping point for me. But when you're a single parent with 4 kids, right, you've got this, what is your truth? And so in that moment, I thought, am I in scarcity? Right? Like I have to do. And then I came back. I went to Sedona, Arizona. That's a whole nother story for another time. But because I went, I saw these like Lutheran girls, don't go to Sedona, Arizona and see practitioners. But when your mom dies, you do crazy stuff. And I was like, I have 2 weeks. I got to figure this out. Well, I went to an iridologist, and she said something's going on. And because of that, I went and got some tests, and I had cervical cancer. So 1 month after my mom died, I was diagnosed with cancer and had surgery. But here's things happening for you instead of to you, Brad. It happened for me because no one goes to the doctor after their mom dies. They're like, should I pull the covers over my head or keep them on? Right? Because that's all you have the capacity to do. But that probably saved my life. And that was June. By February, they fired me because I had decided, when they asked me to do things that were not in alignment with integrity, I said, I never dreamed of saying to my 5 children, I want to leave you an empire. I just want to leave you a legacy. You're going to have to work. Sorry about your luck. But I want to leave you a legacy of what it means to be a good human. And so I started saying no to things. And what does an owner do when their employee says no? They terminate them. And then they terminated my loyal employee of 17 years. I had to stand in my truth, but she was 6 months pregnant. And I was like, okay, I can land on my own feet, but now I'm responsible for you. I think we have that in common, this deep sense of responsibility for the people who are loyal to us. And so I said, you know what? We're going to start our own center. And she says, what do you mean? We don't have any money. And I'm like, I know, but it's on my heart. And I just believe it, and we're just going to do it. And so fast forward.
What year was that?
That was February. That was 2011. By June in 2011, we signed a lease, had an LLC, transformed a building on the most insane budget and free labor from your family. And we opened in August 23rd of 2011. Acquired our second location in 14. Again, no money, I don't know, just sheer will and passion. Acquired our third in January. I decided, I got invited to do a keynote at our association, and I said, I got it. It's the book I'm writing about this experience. It's called Stand in Your Truth. And as soon as Impulsive Rhonda said it, I was like, do you know that you just said you're going to stand in front of 3,000 people and say you got fired? What were you thinking, Rhonda? So it's 2 hours before my phone rings. I'm dressed, ready to do this speech, Brad, and my phone rings, and I pick it up without looking, of course, because why would you look? it's one of the owners who terminated me 8 years ago. Haven't heard from him. And he says, I bought the other 2 owners out. I'm selling the business. It always should have been yours. I hope you'll consider buying it. Now I have to get on stage an hour later and pretend like, if you ever see the video, I'm walking up and down the stage doing this because my body was like, oh my God, I have a secret and I can't tell anybody on this stage right now. Oh. So 8 years after we were fired, we went back and bought the company that fired us, and not with a vengeful heart. Not like, oh, we stuck it to them, because we did the hard work of grieving. We did the hard work of believing that our path was greater. And so that's kind of how Heartfelt started. And then we had a pandemic like 4 months later. So, and I had a traumatic brain injury during.
Is everybody on here ready to sign up to be an entrepreneur? If you aren't ready for this journey,
crazy.
This is the craziness that we are.
It is.
We still take this on in the midst of all this, but it's how we're
absolutely
built.
I mean, but when you're purpose driven, it's the thing that drives you through, right? We have 150 employees, 3 locations, and we serve probably 700 families every single day. So, and then we have this other company. Yep. So this is Heartfelt. Yeah. We're in North Oakland County of Michigan.
That's a whole podcast in its own. And I knew something about Rhonda, but had no idea about the depth there. Well, thanks for the transparency and the vulnerability of being an EO. It's kind of a natural muscle you build over years of being able to be transparent and share. And through those experience shares, well, it ends up over, I think we were talking in the beginning, I think I've been in 15 years and I've had 700 hours of sitting with fellow business owners, kind of pouring your world out. But I mean, it's the powerful nature of sharing your story, and people that are sitting in their own set of challenges, maybe exactly what you're dealing with. And I didn't even know the intersection. My dad actually had stage 4 cancer, and thought we were losing him, and went through a whole journey with it. And so anybody's got a point of relation to kind of what you're sharing, and then to hear the determination to get on the other side, and to hear, where it can be, because it's the adversity that happens in just normal life, right? And then being an entrepreneur plus normal life, adds a double layer. So everybody that's watching on the video side, you can kind of see Heartfelt Impressions Learning Centers here, and locations they've got, and just kind of the programs. And we'll put the show notes and everything. If you happen to be in the area of Michigan, want to check it out, and looking for a great spot for your child, or in the industry, and want to look at some of the best practices. And then the other business as well is the substitute teacher business, which you talked about. My wife was a teacher for 13 years. So this one's close to my world as well. So share a little bit about this one as well.
So this really came, it was just going to be this little thing. But we're really passionate that one of the challenges for teachers is that they can't ever be gone, right? Unless not only because you cannot have a virtual toddler teacher. Like, it's not a thing where you're like, okay, just could you change your diaper? I'm just going to phone in. Like, it's not a thing. And so you always have to have someone physically present. And so one of the things that is important in that is that those teachers don't just worry about, they worry about who. It has to be the right person, because they care deeply about their children. And so we said, we need a substitute teacher company only focused on early childhood, because 3-year-olds are not 8-year-olds, and their needs are very different. And so we started what was just going to be this little company, and we grew. We didn't write a business plan. We didn't do a marketing plan. It's our industry, and we've been in it for 35 years, and no strategic plan, no marketing budget, just make relationships with the people who trust us. And we grew 27% 2 years in a row. Last year, we grew 57%. We're the third-party employer for an entire school district's early childhood programs now. And it's because people trust us, because we do the right thing. It goes back to that integrity thing again. And there's so much greater need than we even realized. And our goal here is to build a powerful workforce. Everyone in the country is talking about the scarcity of early childhood and the difficulty in keeping people in the industry. And we believe that we can be part of that solution by helping build a really powerful workforce. And like we talked about before we started, great working conditions, right? A culture of being seen, heard, and valued. So I feel very blessed. Very blessed.
To your point, anybody, from an entrepreneur and business growth standpoint, or even you're a current entrepreneur, and I've heard business owners that are, struggling to grow. And a lot of times it's trying to find something, because if you don't have a deep passion about it, you will not be willing to do the hard work that it takes to get it through. And I think that's why, my journey, I've, been an entrepreneur 25 plus years, and different businesses I've had. I like the subject matter of what we were doing. I mean, I like the idea of growing the business, but the subject matter. My last business, we, we manufactured teeth whitening products. I love bringing white smiles to people, but not quite the same as changing people's lives in the Philippines and changing business owners' ability to scale. And so it's probably the reason why we, grew to 500 people in 4.5 years, because it was what I was just insanely passionate about. And just like yourself, I mean, 50%, 27% growth. When you get the passion behind it and you believe in it, and then it infects not only customers, it infects employees. Like, it's just, how could they not naturally be gravitating towards you when they feel that authenticity and passion? And so now I think of a dozen different ways to support, and a lot of things to dive into that going forward. Because it's like I said, my wife, second and third grade teacher for 13 years. Yeah. I would hear her, right? It's exactly about those subs and the passion about those individuals, and just this industry overall, right? There's fewer people going into the education space, and it's becoming more and more, challenging. So with a 5 and 9 year old right now, I'm in the middle of that space. Unfortunately, got an amazing school our kids go to here, but it's such a significant area of passion I have. And my wife's actually we're trying to start an entrepreneur program actually at our kids' school, in the elementary school program.
Oh, that's awesome.
Even if kids don't become entrepreneurs, I think now more than ever in the world that we're in, I mean, I think the last stat I heard is like the average, young person will go through 20 different like micro careers now, with so much changing so quickly. And so the skill sets and ability have got to, they at least need to be entrepreneurial thinking, regardless if they go, start their own thing or not. So, well, that's an amazing journey. Thank you for sharing the two companies, and we'll put the links and people kind of check out. And what a fascinating niche that you're filling there on both categories. So, stepping into kind of how our worlds intersected, and through the whole world of outsourcing and VAs. And Rhonda's been with us going on 3+ years now, and Ruth is her staff with Outsource Access that she's engaged. And the first, is, I guess, what kind of made you started to think you needed to go down this path and explore it, and kind of what were the doubt, fears, concerns? Because a lot of our listeners like, I know this exists, but what about time zone? What about competency? What about ability? What about communication? I'm sure you probably had some of those same things. But what were some of your DFCs, I call doubt, fears, concerns, kind of going into it? And what was the need that kind of drove your interest to kind of go down the path and explore it?
So you basically just want me to eat humble pie this whole podcast. It's cool. It's totally fine. It's just because I'm thinking, and I was thinking,
doing that half the time.
Right. I was thinking 3 years, like what was going on? And I remember, so I had known that I needed to work with an implementer. I knew I was an amazing director of early childhood programs, but I had spent several years feeling like a really mediocre CEO. And there's nothing I hate more than being mediocre. Like, it is just, I mean, there are some things, lima beans, but other than that, like, there's not a lot of things. And so I was like, this just can't be right. And I was looking for an implementer. I ended up meeting Dave Wagner, and I knew immediately he was the right implementer for me, and my business partner. And when we started working with him, I think it was Vision Day Building 2.
And for everybody listening too, and what she's referencing, because we were both in the EOS world. So she's referencing EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which a lot of you, and there's a bunch of great platforms out there, EOS, and Scaling Up, and Bloom Growth, and whichever one, just pick one, go down that path. But EOS is one that a lot of people use. But the framework of, kind of defines kind of the CEO is the visionary that's kind of, shiny balls every other day and coming up with the great ideas. And you got the integrator that's there to yank our feet to the ground and make sure that they filter and which shiny balls should we blow up or actually implement. But a lot of people can kind of self-implement these different programs, or you can get an implementer who's an authority in it that can help facilitate. And so that's what, you were kind of in that journey of finding an implementer for EOS in that process.
A coach to kind of hold us accountable and really guide us, but also hold us accountable, right? Like, if you're going to commit to something, I'm one of those, don't commit halfway. And so I wanted someone to help guide us. And I already told you I hate being mediocre. So, we're in the meeting and we're talking about what the key positions are in the company. Okay, who sits in the HR seat? Who sits in the visionary seat? Who sits in the curriculum seat, right? And so, like, I raised my hands enough times, and my business partner was in two. We even shared a seat. Like we weren't even clear which one of us was supposed to be doing one of them. And it was the integrator, and which clearly sold a lot. And I remember just crying at the end of that day and thinking, here I was, I thought I wasn't enough. Like clearly it was me. But then listening to, there are 6 key seats that I'm sitting in, I'm like, that's not even human. Like that's not, no one could be effective. It's not me. And I know that lots of entrepreneurs feel that way because in Forum, we talk about it all the time, right? Yep. There you go. That's the one. I prefer my hats to be like cowboy and baseball and, but for real, it's totally.
I just reminded me to bring that up. I was doing a promo video and a bunch of series and so forth. Cause I mean, as entrepreneurs, like that's exactly what we think of. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this hat thing. And so like, it's like, this is this hat and that hat and that hat and that hat. And so I had this whole kind of humorous video that I did kind of going through kind of the insanity of that process. So just to give everybody a visual of, as if you didn't already have one of what that path looks like, but yeah, it's kind of wearing all those hats and it's a burnout.
Mm-hmm. It is. And so everybody in the company at the time was at capacity too. Right. And so then we started like, what is it that makes me the most miserable? The answer is email. And messing up my own schedule, overcommitting, having 2 meetings at a time, showing up late. I don't want people to feel like my inability to manage time and what felt like time scarcity was a representation of how I valued them. But that's how it was happening, right? If I show up and I said I was going to do something and I was doing it as I was walking in the room or didn't get it done, or I was late to this meeting because I wanted to give this person the time and then this, like it just ended up not representing who I was very well. And then
give us a snapshot, Rhonda, at that time, like how many, so you had both businesses going and how many employees you kind of have at that point?
At that point, we had 150 at Heartfelt and about 50 at EC Subhub. Wow. So,
and then, and several of those, I mean, get those that were kind of frontline staff kind of working with kids. And then you had to start what your management team that you had kind of around you.
Yeah. So 4 directors, an HR recruiter, my business partner is a CFO, a facilities director. We had our assistant directors. So, and the, part of it was clarity of roles and responsibilities. Right. Yep. And the other part was knowing that I wasn't doing the thing that I should have time to do because I was doing so many things and not doing them very well. And it was keeping us from getting better. Like we kept dealing with the same problems over and over. And I'm like, this feels like Groundhog Day. And it wasn't fun. And somebody said, have you thought about, I had tried an assistant, except I mentioned to you before we started, I'm a visionary. So when I say I want a new position, I'm like, here are all the possibilities of what it could be. And people, when you give them a position, they kind of need to know exactly what you need it to be. And so when I tried an assistant, I'm like, oh, it didn't go very well. And so then I didn't have one for a while because I convinced myself I didn't need one. And then someone recommended OA, Outsource Access. And I was like, all right, let me give this a try. And so as soon as I went through the process where you asked me a bunch of questions, like what did I need? What was my pain points? What did I not enjoy doing? I couldn't even answer them as well as I could today. Right? Because I was so busy doing, I couldn't figure it out. But the process that Outsource Access had, even at the time 3 years ago, to take me through and then ask me what was most important to me and then do all the vetting and give me this so much details about my choices. So I think at first I got 4 candidates and none were the right fit. And I totally felt like I could say that, right? Like, nope, you didn't nail it yet. And then the next group and Mary Ruth D'Atolio. Oh my gosh. So first I read her bio and then I watched her video. And then she had worked in an early childhood program for like 6 years in the Philippines. And so I knew like she had a deep understanding. Now, could somebody else have been a great assistant who didn't? Yeah, probably. But there were just things that she answered. And when we interviewed her, I was like, done. And there have been, I know that people have bumps, right? Like getting to know each other. I'm going to tell you what my fears and concerns was. One, people would judge me that I'm using overseas help in my industry. That, would they think I wasn't ethical? Would they think I was, there's like, the world is full of opinions and keyboard warriors. And so, I work in an industry that is very feelings based, like people, kids, very feelings based. And so at first I was really worried that people would judge me. That's the truth. And I guess the other worry was this going to go well? That's probably the two biggest. Like if we were spending the money for a partnership with OA, was this going to go well? And on the front end, as soon as we started the vetting process, I had complete confidence. Also, my pain was high. So my threshold for trying was also high. And so,
had you done any overseas work with anybody? Was there any kind of, aside from just the stigmas in the industry, but as far as the Philippines or as far as anything you were expecting perception wise in terms of communication or abilities?
I was worried about language, right? I was worried about use English and communication and, the difference in the cultures. But honestly, your team did a great job making me aware of the Filipino culture, right? And things that I should know, that I could be respectful of their culture, right? But also like how they might respond culturally to something, like at the end, they might say, God bless, because that's a very big piece. Now that aligns with me, right? But even if it didn't, it would have been like, oh, okay. It's just what they do. It's just part of who they are. So I thought that was great, because we place a really high value on, our core focus is that we nurture, inspire, and support others to be their best. And so you can't do that unless you really know people. How do you nurture someone you don't know? Because you start acting the way you want to be treated, and that's not always how everyone wants. So the initial process was really good. It took me time to figure out. First, we tried a split shift. So, because I wanted to be respectful that our hours are 12 hours difference. And, she was, and your team was very, whatever you need. And so I was like, well, let's try a split shift. Then she doesn't have to stay up too late. And you know what? It didn't work. And so I was like, that's not working. And because I had regular check-ins and the guidance of your team and her coaches, I was like, I feel like, maybe this isn't working either. And then I thought later in the day would work for me. No, because you know what? As soon as I got home with my family, I thought my work day would be over and we'd be able to connect. Guess what? That didn't work either. So now we've been at 7 to 3 every day, and that works. So I say that to say, like, there was a lot of trial and error at the beginning. I was like, okay, you're going to take over my schedule. You're going to take over my schedule. And then I had my IT guy set her up. So she's a designee right in my email. So it's not like I'm forwarding her things. She replies on my behalf, but she identifies it's her, but there's no forwarding and all this other extra steps.
Yep.
And then we came up with a system. So we tried a system that was like priority emails and then stuff to read by the end of the week. And then I had to give some feedback. I'm like, okay, I just want to know, like, that actually is someone I emailed. So that has to go and respond, even though it seems like it could. So there's some back and forth in figuring out. And I would say my experience share would be, you only know after you start. And so going into it, and there's a decent chance, actually, we did do it again. So I was at a industry conference, and a colleague of mine was doing virtual assistants, but only in early childhood. And I was like, oh, this will be great. I'll try that. I was happy with OA, but this seemed like industry alignment for our substitute teacher company. And I was there and connected, a person I knew, and we tried it, and it was a mess. And here's why it was a mess. They did the interviewing, they did the vetting about half as good as OA did. But the other part was, as soon as the person was placed, there really wasn't any more support. And so anytime there was a performance issue, and I got to be honest, there's never been a performance issue with Ruth. Now, maybe I won the virtual assistant lottery, or maybe just maybe because I know she has to do trainings with you. I know she has to do regular check-ins. She gets regular feedback and evaluations, and that system didn't have it. And I said, we don't
the
have
surveys
time
that come to you as well to kind of give us
right. And then I
feedback.
have to do one. Ruth even puts it in my calendar now, 1 week before it's due, so that I don't do it late, because she's important to me and I don't want my forgetting to do it. But it took us a few months to be like, I missed that one for us to figure out how to do that. But in the other one, there was no feedback loop with the support that OA has. And so we let that person, we just didn't continue the contract. And then it took us about 8 months. And I'm like, you know what? We really need this position in ECE SubHub. And so now we have a virtual assistant who doesn't report to me. She reports to my business partner, who does more of the day-to-day there. And she's fantastic. Actually, she went on maternity leave and you had somebody come in seamlessly. Everybody was trained. The playbook was written. So there wasn't like, oh, I got to show another person how to do this, because that playbook is the bomb. Like I once got
something
really
I was fanatical about from the darting when we started. And I'm surprised so many companies in this industry don't do that. But it's like, how do you not kind of have these? Because it's obviously, I mean, it's funny because a lot of companies, when we do that, they see it because none of them have ever documented their processes before. And so it's kind of a good way for them to actually get their processes documented. And it doesn't make you the bad guy to kind of ask it to happen. Yep. So it creates a written format, but then, it gives us redundancy if we ever do have a situation like maternity leave or otherwise, that we can take the ownership of making sure someone's trained. And look, anybody that's listening as well, right? Whatever company and path, and there's a bunch of great companies. There's a bunch of other EOers that have companies. Sure. These are the kind of questions you want to ask folks when you go to evaluate going down this journey is, do they fully manage them? Do they provide oversight? Do they have playbooks, right? Because when you look at the different models that are out there, there's some that are just pure job boards that you go on and can hire somebody directly out of the Philippines and just pay them directly, but you have no idea. They're not a part of a company or an organization. Right. And the biggest frustration people have is just all of a sudden that person disappears, which is what happens a lot of times if they're not a part of an organization. And then there's others that will help find you somebody and then they'll place them, but then they provide no oversight and management. And then you're kind of left to kind of manage. And then there's the fully managed approach, which when I decided to get in this, being an entrepreneur myself and what my experience was, it's like, if we're going to make this sustainable and reliable for other business owners like myself, we got to incorporate, we got to hire these people as full-time employees in the Philippines. And then we've got to provide account management, team leaders, playbooks, and so forth, because, they got to be managed. It's kind of an interesting business in my business where each of our staff are they're part of our company and fully managed there, but then they're integrated with our clients, as well. So they're kind of part of two companies, but it offers that level of oversight so that you don't feel like you're, left, hanging when it comes to managing that experience. And so that's why at the beginning, it's getting clarity about what the constraints and the needs are. The time zone thing is definitely interesting. I thought that'd be a bigger issue, but like you said, it kind of, you settle into place, because a lot of times they'll start and they want more kind of their local hours, but then as they start working together, they realize it can kind of be a bit of a hybrid. And then if you're using tools like Loom and screencasting, which we kind of do, and since you came on, we've gotten a lot better on kind of even that initial onboarding process where we even have weekly meetings every single week for 90 days to make sure that we are getting full sync and integration and hands on the wheel with the process. But no, thanks for sharing. Those are all the kind of things that when people are going down this journey that probably are in their head, they're playing through. And so you ask the right questions in the process, then you kind of settle into kind of a path that works. So it took a little bit of trial and error, kind of initially figuring out what's the right cadence, just like with any employee. And that's the thing is, it's not that much different. I mean, when you bring an employee in that works down the hall from you, you still have to define the role and integrate them in and so forth. And so it's a little bit of a similar path.
But sense of belonging, I think that's one of the things early on that really affirmed for me that we had made a good decision. Because I say it was in the first few months, it might've been in the first year, because I have a horrible sense of time. But Ruth, I know one morning we were doing a check-in and she's like, I'm so excited. We had this picnic. And I'm like, really? She screen shared a picture and it was actually with you. She was so excited that she had met the owner and the founder. And she told me all about what a great time they had and the food was great. And she felt so appreciated. And then there are times when she'll give me, like we check in on each other. How is your family? And she had said, you have like events that you do. And so she belongs, when she references Outsource Access, she belongs to something. And it's hard to belong. Like virtual is great, but it's hard to fully belong to Heartfelt. Like everybody is indebted in the company to Ruth because her role has evolved so much. She does a lot of the repetitive tasks that when people get busy, they tend to, oh, we're going to have dog barking. Hold on one second.
Yeah, that's why we know it's authentic, okay? That's real life for everybody.
I'm not sure I can get them to stop barking because the grass is getting cut. But what's interesting is like her position has evolved in tasks, right? So like she does more company-wide tasks than just my virtual assistant. So it's like we'll have an issue that comes up and we're like, oh, we need to adopt the process. It's not happening with consistency and it's not documented. And everybody goes, I know, Ruth should be in charge. So like every child that enrolls through a family, when they enroll in through our CRM system to join our program, she's a person that makes sure paperwork is really important, right? Because that's how we get a hold of parents if there's an emergency. And so who does it with great integrity every day, no matter what? Ruth. Because she has great ethics, because she has great discipline, and no one interrupts her. There's not a child throwing a temper tantrum in front of her in a classroom that she might not be able to finish it. And where our directors have to go in and help in classrooms. And so we have found, as things have come up in the company and evolved, roles that Ruth could play, because she didn't start out where I really needed, like there's not a full week of work always handling Rhonda's hot messes. And so over time she gets special projects and that'll eat up some of her time, or somebody will say, who could pull the data for this? She's always willing to learn new things. And honestly, my email made me stressed out all the time. And it took us a while back and forth, and they're still tweaking, and there's a lot more effective. So the Zoom, I have EO friends who use the screencast and the Zoom and Loom, and they do a great job. I have trouble sitting still. One of my favorite podcasts is I Have ADD. And it's just, but I need to build those muscles, and working with Ruth is making me better, because she'll ask me questions like, I thought you wanted that blocked out for getting your actual 90 IO task done that you do to the group, but you're asking me to book a meeting. And she does it with love. Like she's not questioning me. It's not as if, well, that's not what you told me. She just says, I just want to make sure that that's really what you want. Or I overlap meetings, and she's like, we decided we have to put drive time in. I always put drive time in, because otherwise it looks like I'm open, but that place I'm going is a 40-minute drive.
Yeah.
And so now we add drive time, right? And so I've learned things just by our going back and forth. But honestly, Ruth is just a wonderful person. And the other thing that I wouldn't been able to figure out how to do is I really wanted to do something nice for her. And I'm like, how do I figure it out? How do I figure it out? And I don't know why I wasn't asking the right person. But so I called her team leader. I'm like, no. I had my meeting that he scheduled with me for the regular. And I said, hey, while we're on, I really want to do something nice for her. Like that she could go somewhere. She does a lot of things with her whole family. And because they as siblings, they do things together because their mom and dad have both passed. And so I was like, I would like to do something they could do together as a family. And so they were able to help me give her the bonus, handle all of the logistics of her getting her bonus with very little pain points on my side. She was so happy, and they went for a weekend, and that made me happy. And it was just, they made it, your team made that seamless. And I want Ruth to be happy. I want her to feel seen, heard, and valued. And I don't know that I could always do that, being virtual, and the fact that I'm moving so quickly in so many different directions. And so I am crazy grateful for her. So,
well, I can't wait I was actually shooting her a screenshot of our call here. I just sent her a direct message while we were chatting to kind of share the feedback, and it'll be fun for her to watch this episode and journey.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, it's a huge part of our culture here. I mean, at the end of the day, as I share, kind of when we launched Outsource Access, it's about, we talked about at the beginning, like aside from good compensation and benefits, it's about people making feel like they're, that they're seen and heard, and that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And, I, still do personal welcome messages to every single VA that comes on board. And in the Philippines,
Nice.
They've never gotten that from a CEO. And I ask about their families and their backgrounds and, what books are they reading? And we'll share pictures of our kids back and forth. And so it's creating an experience, not only from an income and a job standpoint, but also just a connection to leadership that they feel connected. And we have our SOAR is our leadership development program, and ISOF is called our In Search Of program that we have, where we teach everything about from financial wellness to personal health to yoga clubs and fur baby clubs. And we have our own magazine in the Philippines where it's dedicated to nothing but our employees. And now we have our VA of the Year on the front cover. And it's, 30, 40 pages every year, just celebrating our employees and their journey and their, in their path,
That's incredible.
So it's part of,
that's incredible.
It's, well, actually I have to light it up here. This is like you'll probably see her in here actually. So this is our one this past year. But people flip through it. These are all our employees. And so every year we bring everybody in and we do big photography and do makeup. And this is all just dedicated to our employees. This is every single one of them, their journey, their path, their background, their stories. And then, kind of all the culture stuff that we've done, the big Christmas parties and the holiday events. And so it's a fun, they always try and outdress each other too at all the events that we have, which is always kind of crazy to see. But yeah, it's about kind of creating a journey experience. And, we have a podcast. And actually, when I was over there last time, we actually sat down and interviewed, a lot of our staff and kind of engaged with them and interviewed them. And so it's a part of the whole process that it helps us bring people in, and it's the right thing to do. It's how we want to treat our people and give back initiatives. But as you're talking about it's what creates a sustainable experience for our clients, because we have people that want to continue working for us and be a part of it. So here we are 3+ years later, and she's still there and with you because we're investing in her growth and development. So
100%. Absolutely.
And so thanks for sharing this stuff, and so you shared some of the things that should be specifically doing. And for any of the listeners out there and they're thinking about, so, I know she does a lot of HR related specific things, kind of looking at the kind of the general punch list. I know that the team had shared, and everything from email and calendar management, collecting new employee and student paperwork, data entry, new employees with using Jazz HR and ProCare and Paycom. And I'd say it's crazy, Rhonda. We service about 85 different industries now, and we've learned 150 different software platforms because software is such a key element for any business. So it's learning and managing. And that's what we found a big value we're adding for a lot of our clients is, a lot of us pay a lot of money for these software subscriptions, right? But we don't ever maximize the capability because our existing staff got a million other things they're doing. And so that's one of the things we find is that because we can come in and our staff can be dedicated to maximizing it, they're getting all the value out of that software or other tools that they bought. But data entry, customers and purchasing and admin and monthly budget and employee master list that she's updating and tuition statements. And so it sounds like her role just kind of evolved. And that's kind of how this journey goes. For the people that are listening, you start off with the constraint points. And as Rhonda was talking about, and we have this kind of 2-question exercise and crazy, we've continued it. We've done it with startups we got a $300 million pharmacy. And I told the CEO and I said, yep, it's just these 2 questions, just send it to your managers. And just ask them, what are you doing that's not the best use of your time? And how many hours per month are you spending on it? And we make people put a pencil to it. And then what are the things on the radar that you want to be doing and you think that the company should be doing, but you're not due to time, money, or knowledge constraints? And those 2 simple questions, unpack the biggest part of friction for any business is where are people not, getting, doing the highest and best use of their time? And then what are the things that are not getting done? Whether it's reconciling reports and data so that you can make better decisions, like it's whether getting certain, testimonial videos up on the website you've been meaning to do for years or other things. And the collection of those help create what those constraint points are to figure out where can they kind of add the most, value. And so it sounds like as she's evolved through the journey, you had some initial pain points that she kind of started with, but then I say the number one word is confidence, right? And it's like, I can tell people how great all this stuff is. But it's not until you get and start working with that person and you see like the caliber and capability and the affordability that comes with it, then you start adding more things because you have confidence that they can do it. You start stripping more off. And now, and then your staff. We have one of our clients in Philadelphia that their VA from us in the Philippines was rated their employee of the year out of 50 employees. because of the impact. Her name's Rika for Hyler Painting, a big painting company that has been growing. So I love to hear that she's kind of having a similar type of reputation among your other staff there.
Yeah, she is an integral part. And so I think the other thing that is really special about Ruth is that she treats everyone that she interacts with such kindness. And it doesn't matter if it's a surprise phone call and she'll jump on Zoom with me with like 30 seconds notice. And she's, hi, how are you today? And you know what? That's not a given in this world. And so for her to always have that warmth and kindness, her name comes up often with my team with, if there's someone you want to count on, someone who's always kind and warm and accepts assignments with really pure positivity, it's Ruth. I feel so blessed. I really do.
And that's an interesting byproduct. And I fell in love with the Philippines when I started, my very first staff. I mean, the young girl I hired off a job board that started my journey, Giselle, back in the very beginning, 23 years old, had one small corporate job, never been a VA in her life, hired her off of a job board. And she became my COO over 500 people in 4.5 years.
Wow.
And so the desire and passion to grow and to learn and to continue to, evolve and develop their skill set, and then do it with true, passion for service and support. You get a true, and it's rubbed off. I mean, one of my good friends, I kind of taught him to go down this path, and he's got a commercial HVAC business here in the Atlanta area. And it's actually rubbed off on the positive. The Filipino culture is rubbed off to his, local US employees of how they treat one another. We got a turf control business that one of our staff, he actually does all the routing for all their technicians that spray chemicals on yards. Out from the Philippines, he routes 1,000 technicians per week.
Wow.
And 2 of his US employees were having a big conflict over email. And our staff, Ivan, settled the dispute between the two of them. Said, guys, hey, we don't need to. So that's why I love, and, I know why you have your big smile about, your industry and what you do. And that's why I have the same.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's helping businesses scale and be successful and so forth is kind of the leading indicators, but the lag are the rolling impacts otherwise that it has on people's lives and what it gives them and the ability on both sides of the equation. So I love you sharing those little nuances. Those are the little things that really kind of stand out a lot of times.
Yeah, they do for me too. So they do for me too.
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much. And I know you give me so many additional ideas. We were talking earlier about some things. I
wrote down some for you too.
Yeah.
You gave me some too. Thanks. I had enough to do.
That's what happens.
Shiny balls.
Going to get on but just navigating this journey of growth and when you're in a hyper growth business and so forth, and navigating leadership and transition and so forth. And it's part of what we found ourselves supporting a lot of people and going through that journey, because, cash can be tight when you're growing too. Right. And it's at the end of the day, you're like, nope, sorry. All of you just need to wear 14 more hats. I can't afford hiring another full-time person.
Yeah.
And, with the more affordable rates, it allows people to actually be a release valve that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise a lot of times. So it kind of provides that integral, support process.
And so I want to speak to that for a second, Brad, because you asked me early what my fears and concerns were. And so I had a peer, an EO peer, ask me, he said, aren't you concerned, does all the money that not enough money gets to the VA, right? There's a difference between, it's kind of like when parents ask me, I pay this much in tuition, but the teachers only get paid this much because they don't understand the infrastructure cost. And so I paused on that for a minute. And you know what? I'm usually a quick on my feet. I'm impulsive. Yeah. I'm probably going to answer right away. And I said, you know what? I want you to give me a minute to think about that. And I actually went back and Ruth and I talked, and I said, how do you feel about, your job? And how do you feel about the opportunity it provides? And she's happy. She has good wages. She has good benefits in her world, in her culture, in her, I'm not in California. I couldn't afford to pay the wages in California. It's not apples to apples. I couldn't afford all the lawyers in California either, but that's another story. And so what I asked myself is, am I partnering with a company that is got integrity, that cares about their employees, that's pouring into them, And my virtual assistant, who is technically an employee of Outsource Access, and the service you're providing to me is an extraordinary service, and she's really happy. So I can see from behind the scenes the amount of support and infrastructure and system that reduces the failure rate and increases the success rate, which increases my success rate of my company because she's so well equipped. I'm not doing that. You're doing that. And so I came back. It was 2 months later. I came back and I said, I have an answer for you. And here it is. Her wages are very competitive and her benefits are great. She's really happy. I'm really happy. And therefore, I feel really good about this choice. Do you want to hear a funny story? That person is a client of yours now. So there you go. So sometimes it's just but it's the lens to which we see and how we're influenced by half information. Right. And I'm like, show me the full picture before I make a decision.
Totally.
You know,
I'm so glad that you brought up that point, because it's, it can be an elephant in the room that people talk about sometimes.
Sure.
And I'm happy. And I've had very transparent conversations with folks to show and understand. Anybody who's been an entrepreneur and a business owner, and like you said yourself, the infrastructure that it takes to go and incorporate in another country, and the level of cost and infrastructure. But I chose to do that and do the really hard thing in the middle of a pandemic. Incorporating in a third world country in the pandemic is a whole nother fun story to share.
But can't wait.
But to do that process, and I mean, we know what we have in the US in terms of, the costs and the labor laws and so forth.
Yeah.
Right. There's a whole nother layer there, and they have all their same equivalent of taxes and everything. They have 13th month, which is a whole additional compensation they get, double payment in the month of December. And when it comes to health insurance and benefits, right? I mean, we're fanatical about that. We actually have the best health insurance in the Philippines, actually one that, because they're such a generational, country, and they're taking care of grandparents, we chose health insurance that actually will cover parents as well. At least one of their parents. It's the iceberg, when you look at, and people don't realize too, I mean, the cost is way more than just their salaries, right? They're all the additional
100%.
compensation elements. And the infrastructure to provide the support and the training. And I spend $30,000 a year just in learning and training and development, and all the programming and stuff. So I appreciate it. It's good to hear. It's what helps us attract. I mean, I'm all about measuring 10 times and cutting once. And so when we're going through several thousand applicants a month, we're very intentional about our vetting process. I mean, I invest $20,000 a year in predictive index, right, as a tool to assess.
I use predictive index.
Yeah. Yep. So actually I started with culture index, and we transitioned to that one in the last 6 months, but we invest massively, and people just don't realize a lot of what it takes to ultimately find, secure, train, onboard. And then a lot of people don't realize when we hire them as full-time employees, if for some reason they do get terminated or what have you, I'm obligated to compensate up to 5 months, right? If I can't find additional work and things for them. So and then there's additional things we do to compensate and pay, and we pay bonuses based on how well their playbooks are kept up for you. And so it's, there's a lot of different elements. So again, anybody's going down this journey, if you're working with a firm that, it's more than, going and hiring someone directly off the job board, but it's all the additional support and infrastructure. And the big picture ultimately is retention. And by providing retention, because all of us know that even if it's $500 or $600 less per month, what does it cost if that person walks out the door? And that's what the experience I had when I first started this journey is I would find some people and I'm like, oh, I'm only paying, $600, $700, $800 a month and so forth. And this was back 7 years ago. But then this person would disappear after 2 months because they're sitting there just looking at other job boards, or they can make the next $1 or so per hour. So we're trying to find people that, and we tell them up front in their interviews, like, hey, you can go on these other platforms and, you can make different types of compensation, but this is what we're offering and what we're about. And if you want to be a part of this journey, we're here to support you in that, in that path. So now, thank you very much for sharing that, because that's definitely an element people ask when they look at the different paths that they can kind of go down. So, well, Rhonda, thank you so much, man. We have uncovered so many additional elements of entrepreneurship and journey and being able to have the resilience. I think that's the number one thing any entrepreneur has to kind of navigate in the process. So we'll have kind of in the show notes links to the websites that I shared for Rhonda, and for any of you that are listening, and if you're kind of exploring this whole path, and I kind of mentioned this briefly in the beginning, but it starts with that 2-question exercise. And so as I shared, we've done this with a ton of people. And so if you want to email tools, tools at outsourceaccess.com, And you can put Rhonda in the subject line because we know where it came from, just so we can send you the right one. We'll send you a link to this kind of little workbook that we put together that has a video. And for people that are curious, well, how does this journey go and what can they actually do? And so those two questions, right? That's what it starts with. And look, if you never outsource a thing or hire a single virtual assistant, I can't tell you, you should do this every single year in your own, own right, which is simply, what are you currently doing? You don't feel is the best use of your time. What is that item? And then put a pencil to it. How many hours per month are you spending on it? Because a lot of people will start and they're like, I don't spend that much time on that. I won't put it down. But over and over again, when people put the pencil to it, they're like, I spend 6 hours a month chasing down receivables. So it's like, once you add it up, it's pretty crazy when you add that column up. So we'll send you a link to this, and it's got a video where I kind of walk you through it. And then we actually have 700 tasks. We've done over 4 million hours of work in the last 6 years across 85 industries. And so we've put a list of over 700 tasks organized by marketing, sales, operations, that you can just run through and literally see word for word the types of stuff we are doing for small to medium businesses. And as people are reading through this, they're like, yep, that's a problem. That's a problem. And these are things that people didn't realize that could be, outsourced. So you kind of run through that. Got an example of a completed 2-question exercise, actually a live one done by a client. Any confidential stuff's kind of taken out. But this is one that an actual company did. And they added it up and found tons of things, either things that people were doing that weren't the best use of their time or things that they weren't, kind of getting to. And then we got a kind of a blank template you can kind of do yourself. So yeah, send an email at tools@outsourceaccess.com, put Rhonda in the subject line, and we'll shoot that your way. If you want to kind of begin your journey. And obviously you can always go to outsourceaccess.com and visit us. Got tons of videos and content there to kind of share and learn about the journey, and can book a free discovery call. Can see if we can help you, or if not, kind of point you in the right direction. So Rhonda, thank you so much for your valuable time. I know entrepreneurs' time, especially with yours, is super, super valuable. And thanks for sharing your story, your journey. I think this is going to have an impact for people way beyond even virtual assistants, some things you shared on grief and everything you kind of navigated. So really appreciate it. And look forward to sharing this with Ruth. I know it'll be fun for her to kind of see it. And
me too.
We'll continue the journey.
Much love, Ruth. Thanks, Brad. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you.
Take care.
Bye.